Hi everyone. This tutorial is built around a question from a viewer who asked on my previous tutorial about creating picture frames out of text. Do you know how to do the opposite? So it's as though the text has been cut out of the image. First, thank you for the question. I love hearing them because then I can create exactly what you want to see. I'm going to show you how to do this non-destructively on the iPad version of Publisher, but we're also going to have some additional fun with picture frames. I'll show you how to stack them for a layered effect, how to add masks to them to create realistic custom shapes, and how you can add additional elements to them to add texture and dimension. Everything that we do is going to be non-destructive so that you can easily swap out for different designs. Now, while I am teaching this on the iPad version of Publisher, the same process applies to the desktop version, so you can follow along as long as you know where the tools are located. I'm specifically using Publisher because it's the only one with picture frames, but you can accomplish the same non-destructive effects in Designer and Photo using vector shapes, text frames, and the gradient tool. Are you ready? Let's get started. I'm starting with a letter-sized document in landscape orientation, and I'm going to select my picture frame tool and add a picture frame to the entire background. I'm also going to add a second smaller one on top of that. The smaller one's going to be a torn postcard that's tacked on top of the other one. I'm going to temporarily lock that smaller one just so that I don't accidentally add anything to it. I'm going to focus on the bottom frame first, and for that, I'm going to pull in an image of a vintage Paris map. That's a public domain image that I pulled from Raw Pixel, and I'll link to it below. So I'm going to select that layer, and with my picture frame tool selected, I'll tap on Replace Image up here at the top. And I have mine in my files, but you can pull them from your photos as well as the stock studio. So I'll just go ahead and tap and add that. Now the picture frame tool allows me to scale this up and move it around. So I'm going to grab my move tool and I'm going to scale it up a bit and then move it to make sure that Paris down here at the bottom is showing in the bottom corner. I'll go ahead and lock that into place now and unlock my smaller one. For the smaller frame, I'm going to pull in a scan of a vintage postcard that I created, and I'm going to follow the same process. So I'll select that, select my picture frame tool, and use Replace Image. Again, mine is in my files, so I'll go ahead and pull that in. Now in this case, this is actually a transparent PNG, and I could have pulled this in as is and done everything to that, but I'm using a picture frame because I want the ability to swap images out as much as possible. Now you can see it came in horizontal. I actually want it to be tilted. So I'm going to grab my move tool, double tap, and that's going to allow me to rotate it. And I'm holding my finger down on the canvas just to rotate at 15-degree intervals. I want to scale this up, and I'm not really worried about cutting anything off. I think though I'm going to rotate it the other direction. I want the wording to be on the left. Now, if you look at my layer stack, it basically creates groups. So I have the two images within a parent group, which is the picture frame, and that allows me to add additional elements, which we're going to do later. But for now, what I want to do is make the postcard look a little less perfect by using a scan of torn paper to mask away the edges along the side and the bottom. I'll select my place tool, and I'm going to grab this scan from my files. Now this is from a set that I provided with a torn paper collage tutorial here on my YouTube channel, and I'll link to that tutorial above and in the description below. I want to rotate this so that the torn paper is here on the left, and I'm just going to scale this up so it's a little bit larger than the postcard itself and set it here on the edge. And then I'm going to duplicate this one, rotate it so the torn paper is upright, and I think I'll flip this horizontally and then bring this down to here. Now I want to create masks out of this, and the easiest way to do that is to select both of these and just use the blend modes here and change this to erase. Now you can see that it's turned them white. It hasn't done anything yet. And the reason for that is it's not inside of the picture frame group. So I'm going to clip that inside. I'll just take these, hover over the right side of that parent layer and release. And what it's done is gone ahead and erased away everything within those two masks. So they're still there. I can actually take them. I can move that around. If I feel like I need to make them a little bit bigger or smaller, I could do that. But I think that looks just fine. Next, I want to add the word Paris in vertical formation down the side of the card. Now there isn't built-in vertical text, but I'm going to force it by using the text frame tool. So I'll grab the text frame and I'm going to drag out a tall, narrow frame. And I'm going to use a font called Neoland that I downloaded from Creative Fabrica, and I've linked to it below. I want to make my font pretty big because what that's going to do is force the next line each time I type a letter because it's going to hit the side of the text frame. So I'm just going to start with something like 144, and I can always make it smaller. Let me grab my keyboard here, and you can see that it's spacing it out quite a bit, but I'm going to fix that in a moment. So most of it is outside of my text frame, and that's because the spacing between the letters is so great. So I'm going to tap to select all of my letters here. I'll go to the text tool, and under leading here in the middle, I'm just going to start dragging to the left and bring that up until the S is in place. And I think I'm going to bring the font down just a little bit and then play with the leading again. Now I could fuss around with this and play with the kerning between each letter, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to call that done. But what I do want to do is go up to the contextual menu at the top here and choose center align. I want to have the text frame hug the letters. So at the bottom here, you can see there's some spacing. I'm just going to double tap, and that's going to force the text frame at the top and the bottom to hug the top and the bottom of the letters. And I can use this outer handle here just to drag it up a bit. Now, by using a text frame, this is editable text. So when I swap out designs, I can change the font, I can change the font size. I could even say drag this out to create something a little bit different. I want to stay non-destructive as much as possible so that everything is flexible. Now at this point, I could simply use a geometric operation to subtract this from the picture frame, but that's destructive. Again, I want to remain non-destructive. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with those masks. I'm going to clip this inside of the picture frame, and I'll change that to erase. And you can see it's erasing everything away so that you can see the map underneath it. Now this text is obviously kind of flat, so there are a couple of things that I want to add to the word Paris just to give it a bit more dimension and lift it off of the background. The first thing I'm going to do is create a duplicate of the text frame. I'm going to change it back to normal and give it a dark fill. Now I don't want to use black. I'm either going to use gray or dark brown. I think since this map has some brown in it, I'm going to use that. So I'll pick this one, and I'm just going to bring that luminance down a little bit just by dragging my pencil. I'm going to change the opacity to something much lower. What I'm trying to accomplish here is if this was actually sitting on top of the map, there would be some shadows there. I am going to add a drop shadow to the picture frame, but I also want to darken up the map in general just because it has something sitting on top of it. I might make this a little bit darker here. And then I'm going to bring this outside of the picture frame. So bring it up to here. I'm going to close this and then move it right beneath it. The reason I'm closing the group is sometimes it's a little bit difficult on the iPad to move things beneath a group until you close it. It just makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to just bring this up just a touch. The next thing I want to do is break up the edge of the lettering a bit so it's not so perfect. This is optional. It's going to be very subtle, and it's going to require access to Designer to use it. So if you don't have Designer on your iPad, you can skip over this next step. I'm going to head up to the top here and under Studio Link, choose Designer. And I want to add a stroke to the original text frame. And I'm going to use a gritty vectory brush to create a deckled edge around the letters. So I'm just going to zoom in, and you can see they're really perfect right now. So I want to break that up a little bit. I'm going to use a brush from the Bezier Buddy set by True Grit Texture Supply Company, and I've linked this set below. You can use any gritty brush that you have, including one of the built-in ones in Sagerai Media. So I'm going to select that text frame. I'll go ahead and add a stroke. And I want to select one of these brushes. I think I'll just choose maybe this rough fine mono. Now you can see that's way too much. So I'm going to go up to the stroke panel here. And I'm going to start with 2.5 and just see how that looks. All right, I like that. If I zoom in, you can see that it's not a perfect line anymore. Because the letters are set to erase, the stroke is automatically going to erase away the edges to give the impression of them being cut out by hand. Again, this is subtle and optional, but it's a quick way to make the letters look a little less perfect. I'm going to add a drop shadow to the picture frame, and I want to do that at the parent layer. So I'm going to select that topmost layer, go to my FX Studio, and I'm going to toggle on and then tap outer shadow to get the contextual menu. And I'm just going to bring this down and to the right. Now, this is technically paper, so I don't want to create too much of a drop shadow. If I make it too deep, it's not going to look real. So I'll just go ahead and bring it to right about there and then bring my radius up. And in the FX Studio, I want to toggle on scale with objects so that if I scale this up and down, the shadow is going to scale with it. Just a few final edits that I want to do to the whole thing. In my assets here, I have a thumb attack that I created using vectors. And I'm going to bring this up to the top here and maybe make it just a touch smaller. And I'm going to select that and the elements for this smaller picture frame and just group them up. And I'll pull this down here. I don't want to cover up Paris. So what I'm going to do is take this second handle on the outside and just make the whole thing smaller. And then I think I'll tilt it a little bit. Now I'm also going to add a little bit of dimension to the map in the back. I feel like it's a little too perfect and flat. So within the picture frame, I'm going to open that up and I want to unlock it. I'll go to my rectangle tool and I'm going to add a rectangle across the top of the entire thing. I don't need a stroke, just a fill, and the color doesn't matter because I'm going to remove that in a moment. But I want to go ahead and clip this inside of my picture frame. I'm going to go to my stock studio and key in crumpled paper. And I think I'm going to use this top one here. I'm going to grab the gradient tool. And with that rectangle selected, I'm going to tap and that's going to add it across that rectangle. Now I need to scale this up a little bit. And what I want to do is change the blend mode of this. So I'm going to change that to something like multiply and then just bring the opacity down. I just want some subtle sort of crumpled effects on the map, just again, so it's not so perfect. So there's without and there it's with. And I could also play around with maybe linear burn. It gives a little bit warmer shadow. So because this rectangle is in place, I can go in, if I don't like that particular piece of paper that I selected, I could choose another one. So I could try this brown one here. As long as I have the gradient tool selected, I can just tap. I'm not really liking how that looks, but I could try a couple different ones. I actually think this one might be better. Let me bring the opacity up just a bit. So there's with and without. And it's just added a subtle dimension to that map that was a little bit too flat in the background. Now that all of this is in place, I wanted to show you that because I work non-destructively, I can easily move things around. So of course my text is editable. I can change the font, I can change the word itself, but I can also easily swap images out and create a different design. So I'm going to create one for Chicago. I have a vintage map of the Chicago Loop that I, again, downloaded from Raw Pixel, and I'll link it below. So I'm going to lock this one temporarily, and I'm going to select this picture frame. And with my picture frame tool selected, I'll go ahead and tap on Replace Image, and it's going to bring up my files. I'll choose this one right here. And it's pulled it in the wrong direction, so I'm just going to use my Move tool and double tap. And then rotate, oh, it's picking the wrong one. Let's grab this guy. I'll rotate and I can scale that up. And then of course I want to change the postcard and stuff like that. So I'm going to lock this. I'll unlock this one. Again, I only do that because it makes sure that I don't accidentally add something to the wrong one. I think I'm going to turn this down a little bit because it's kind of distracting on that map. So for this one, again, I'm going to select my picture frame. I want to make sure that I'm selecting the picture frame layer. I'll go ahead and choose Replace Image, and I have another more detailed Chicago map that I've downloaded and I've linked below. Now again, this came in the wrong direction, so I'm going to double tap to select it, and I'll go ahead and rotate it. Let me just find the handle. There it is. So we have Chicago here on the left. And the word's going to sit over Lake Michigan here. So I'll move that right there. All right. Now, since this isn't Paris, of course, I want to go ahead and change that. I'm going to get rid of the shadow in the back. I can replace it as soon as I'm done. Now, again, because all of this was created non-destructively and this is editable text, all I need to do is go in here and I can just change this to Chicago. It's going to be much too big for that frame. So I'm going to select the whole thing and just bring the font size down. And you can see that it's bunching up there. What I'm going to do is go to my text tool here and just play with the tracking again. Actually, what I'm going to do is select that frame and just push it like that. So let's just make this a little bit smaller. Sometimes you just have to adjust it a little bit. And I think I'll make the frame itself big enough to bring that O in and then just scale the whole thing down. So now I can go ahead and duplicate that, change that duplicate back to normal. I'm going to bring that outside of the group. I want to close up that picture frame. I'm going to change this to something like linear burn and just bring the opacity down. Again, it's just to darken it up a little bit. And I'll pull that beneath that picture frame. And I could fuss around with this and move the background around, but I'm going to call this one done. If you have any questions about what you've learned here or a suggestion for a tutorial you'd like to see here on my channel, let me know in the comments below. I have lots more Affinity tutorials to come here on my channel, so be sure to hit subscribe so you always know when a new one is published. In the meantime, you might want to check out one of these two next. Thanks for watching.